About smart motorways, the most ridiculously named roads in the world. A lot of people think they're anything but smart. These are the stretches of motorway that they take the lay-by off, the hard shoulder off, so that they can turn that into a lane and therefore ease traffic. The problem is that requires you, if you happen to break down at exactly the right moment, or you'll find yourself sort of parked in the fast lane with huge trucks and lorries and cars careering down towards you. Now, I think it's more than 60 people have died on these smart motorways since they were brought in earlier in this century. And, it seems to me crazy that they continue with these when people are dying. I mean, they're dangerous. It's quite obvious. The question has to be asked, why are they continuing? But so keen are National Highways, that's the organisation that runs our motorways, so keen are they on these traffic easing systems that they've commissioned a £768,000 advertising campaign to tell us how brilliant they are, these smart motorways. Well, our next guest, I think, will rather compassionately tell us that they're not at all smart and they're not brilliant, because I'm very sorry to say that her husband, Jason, was killed getting out of his car on one of these lethal stretches of motorway that are supposed to ease the traffic. So a very warm welcome to the founder of the Smart Motorways Kill campaign, Claire Mercer. Good evening, Claire.
Hello.
Commiserations, of course, my condolences about your husband. I think you and I have spoken before. I think the last time was purely to both of us to sort of say these motorways are crazy. But now the National Highways organisation seem to be so worried that people like you and I are saying they're mad. They're spending £750,000 on a TV advertising campaign to persuade us how great they are. What do you think about that?
Exactly. I mean, well, not just that, but it's a government department, so it's £750,000 of our pounds on something that costs billions of pounds that we don't want and is killing us. So they're just spending more and more and more of the taxpayers' money on something they just need to stop. You know, and the amount they spent on such a patronising and dismissive piece of propaganda is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how they can justify just keep throwing this money, good money after bad, on smart motorways. It just needs to stop.
Well, the advertising blitz stars gadget show presenters Otis Steely and Susie Perry driving along going, "Oh, lovely, we're on one of those smart motorways." What is it? What's the death count so far, Claire? About 63, isn't it?
63 in the last, I think that's the last 7 years in total, but a lot of the data's not been tallied up. The official accepted figure was 38 just between 2014 and 2019. But obviously we've progressed a lot further from there. And the government is going to keep fighting me on it, and they're going to make me take them to High Court. In the meantime, more people are going to die.
Grant Shapps recently announced that some of the planned new smart motorway stretches would be shelved. This was a sort of slight concession to the likes of you to say, well, yes, we do understand there are safety concerns, and as such, we won't instigate these new stretches of smart motorway. Well, if they're accepting that much, then surely they should accept they're all not safe. Do you see what I'm saying?
Exactly. I mean, how are the ones that aren't even open and a danger to us more of a threat than the ones that are already open and already killing people? You know, if they're all dangerous, they're the ones that need closing first. And they've actually only agreed to pause them. And they're only pausing 50 miles out of a current 150 miles. So they're not even pausing a third of what they've got planned. It was all pomp and circumstance. It was all made to look like a concession. And really, they're just continuing to dismiss us because they do not want to give up on the massive private contract generating scheme that smart motorways are.
I mean, no one gets more furious in traffic jams than me, and anything that eases traffic jams is a good idea, ostensibly, as far as I'm concerned. But if the choice is between me sitting in a traffic jam and people getting killed, even I will accept that the traffic jam is acceptable. It's not that bad a thing that there should be a traffic jam now and again if the alternative is people dying. I really cannot understand this.
Yeah. Well, that was actually thrown at me once. Highways England actually provided the data for the stretch where my husband was killed. And when I went through it and dissected it, it was basically that stretch had been forced through. It shouldn't have even been opened by the time my husband was killed. It was forced through to save the average commuter 4 minutes a day. So that's 2 minutes to work and 2 minutes from work, which is a negligible amount anyway. That's not going to quell anyone's fury in a traffic jam, is it? But then, when the horrific incident occurred, that was the most horrific in recent memory, and everyone was stuck for 8 and 9 hours, that's all your 4 minutes for the entire year worked out, and 2 people didn't get to go home. So it's just not worth it.
Well, sorry to take you down a painful avenue, but could you explain what happened with Jason and when it happened?
It was in June 2019. He was in a minor collision on the motorway. It should have only ever just been a minor collision, but they were at a sign that said no hard shoulder for 4 miles. It didn't say anything else, not that there's an emergency refuge area a mile out of sight. 2.5 years ago, we knew far less about smart motorways than we do now. So I don't know. I certainly didn't know that was a smart motorway until there was 2 police officers on my doorstep. But they had a minor collision. You can see them travelling further along to try and find somewhere safe to stop, but the sign says no hard shoulder for 4 miles. They couldn't get their vehicles out of the live running lane because of the crash barrier hemming them in, and they themselves couldn't get over the crash barrier because there was a 30-foot drop onto the slip road below. So they were just left in harm's way. And all this technology that we're led to believe is there and we'll pick them up did not work. Half of it's not installed, half of it didn't work. And it still doesn't work now. And the likes of Otis and Susie, they say, oh, is all this tech? No, there isn't. My husband and Alexandro and the contents of their vehicles and their bodies and everything was thrown across 4 lanes of smart motorways for 6 minutes before the road was closed. In that, it was members of the public that phoned in and said, get the road closed. Midas did not pick them up. And when I asked why Midas didn't pick them up weeks later, when I even learned what Midas was, I was told they died in the wrong place. They died between 2 loops.
This is it. It's absurd, isn't it, that you have to actually break down at the right place or have a minor accident at the right place. It's absolutely bizarre that anyone can feel there's any sense in that at all. What actually hit your husband and the other driver?
Because they were in a live running lane and couldn't get out of the way, a HGV that can't manoeuvre. The HGVs have got bigger stopping distances. That is why it's almost always a HGV hitting the stranded vehicle. The cars got round them. This HGV couldn't. It ploughed into 2 people that were stood by the side of the road. So they weren't in their vehicles, they were stood by the side of the road. You do not win a standoff with a HGV when you're stood there. And it killed them instantly. And they were spread all across the road and the technology didn't pick them up. And they can say, well, you're not always... people think it was a terrible cataclysm of circumstances, being hemmed in, not being able to get over the barrier, but that happens so often. An 8-year-old boy was killed on a viaduct smart motorway. What was he meant to do, go over the side there?
It is, once again, I'm so sorry for your loss, Claire. But you mentioned earlier that if the government doesn't see sense on this, Grant Shapps, of course, is something of an evangelist about these smart motorways. He makes the right noises. He says things like, oh, we do understand there are safety concerns, and then proceeds to tell us why they're so wonderful. So he talks the talk, but he never walks the walk. You said earlier, if they don't do anything, you're going to take them to court?
It's the High Court. The judicial review was one of the first things that I started. Within a few months, I was meeting with the solicitors and we were arranging it. And it was January, the first meeting, and they said, we'll be in court by June. And no sane judge could sign this off a second time. They'll be banned by June. March, COVID came in and interrupted absolutely everything. And it's taken us this long to get back on track, but we are back on track now. So I've been pushing ahead with this, as much as I can, but it's always been going on in the background. But I've been hoping that they would see sense before they made me get all the way to the High Court and people continued dying in the process. But they're not. They're just going to keep it and keep going and keep going until they're banned in law. I'll tell
you what, Claire. I mean, so many things that are mad seem to happen these days, and smart motorways just strike me as utterly insane. I mean, people are dying out there, but presumably your legal action. When would you hope that gets to court?
Well, they told me 6 months initially, so I'm hoping definitely within this year. But actually tonight, I have just come straight from a meeting with South Yorkshire Police because I've been pushing for corporate manslaughter charges as well. And I've just been told that that Highways England legally defend their position and can prove that they do not have a duty of care to the motorist. So Highways England, as a government department, do not have a duty of care to the motorist.
I can't imagine why. I'm assuming that you see this as an important mission in order to honour the memory of Jason.
Exactly. He's never coming back. He was a big, loud, noisy man that made a big difference to a lot of people's lives, and nothing I can ever do. There isn't justice. Justice would be Jason back. Justice would be Nargis Begum back. Justice would be Derek Jacobs back. But that's never, ever going to happen. So all we can do is change things in their names. It should never have happened. He was with me at 8 o'clock. He was dead by 12 minutes past 8. And it took 4 hours for them to just tell me because the utter carnage. They didn't know. When they turned up on my doorstep, they asked me to describe him because they didn't know who was which vehicle. That is the utter carnage you're faced with, the devastation. It's not just that they were killed on a smart motorway. It's that they were smashed to pieces and you have to go through an inquest and a trial. Then you have to bring a judicial review. Now it's looking like I'm going to have to bring private prosecution to get anyone to even face corporate manslaughter charges.
Well, Claire,
so it's just going to keep carrying on until we get what should have happened in the first place.
Well, keep fighting, Claire, because I think you've got sanity and decency on your side, and I support you every step of the way. You know where to come if you ever want to talk again. Thank you so much for your time. Claire Mercer there, founder of the Smart Motorways Kill campaign. She knows what she's talking about because a smart motorway